Welcome to Don't Wait Till Pigs Fly with host Nancy Becker on Global Voice Radio. Nancy and her guests will share tips and recommendations on moving forward in your life and business now and not waiting till pigs fly. Here's your host, Nancy Becker.
Hey everybody, good afternoon and welcome to another edition of Don't Wait Till Pigs Fly, where we have conversations for and with business owners who are sharing their expertise and their knowledge to help all of the listeners soar higher and grow their business. Today, we're speaking with Claire Chandler, who's a leadership strategist who helps business leaders achieve financial and people stability. As president and founder of Talent Boost, Claire leverages 25 years of experience in human resources and communications to boost leadership effectiveness and cure workplace misery. She has extensive expertise in organizational effectiveness, including executive and leadership development, communication strategy, employment branding, talent and succession management, facilitation and training, career coaching, employee onboarding and engagement, customer relations, and human capital planning. She is a certified senior professional in human resources. She holds a bachelor's degree in English from Fairfield University and a master's degree in professional and technical communications from the New Jersey Institute of Technology. She owns the company Talent Boost, where talent isn't born, it's boosted. Wow, fantastic. That's great. Welcome, Claire, and thank you so much for being here today.
Thanks, Nancy. I'm psyched to be here and happy to spend time with you and your listeners today.
Wonderful. It's stuff that we all need to know and things that we don't necessarily know or want to know, but need to for our businesses to grow. So I'm looking forward to everything I can learn this afternoon. And
Great.
I am going to start out by asking you the question, why did you transition from a career in corporate America to starting your own consulting business?
Wow. Way to just start with a zinger, right? And it's crazy. It's crazy, right? In fact, when I did it, a couple of people, more than a couple of people, said, "What are you thinking?" Said, "I sure hope you know what you're doing." At my going away party from my quote unquote, I'm using air quotes here, from my safe, cushy job in corporate America, my parents came to it and they pulled my mom aside and said, "I hope she knows what she's doing, kind of going out from this nice, stable company and going into the great unknown of starting her own business. Hope she's got a plan." And the fact was, I didn't. And here's the reason I did it. So the year was 2011, and I was on a track to become an executive in human resources. I was a VP at the time. I was traveling a lot. I was learning a ton, and I was going 110 miles an hour. And that was awesome because I was going so fast and working so hard and traveling so much that I didn't have time to stop and think about whether what I was doing was what I was passionate about. And then I got a call that I had cancer. And I went from 110 miles an hour to had to stop everything, had to delegate everything to my amazing team. And thank God I had a great team who knew what they were doing, who stepped up without even having to be asked. And I had to take a month off. I had surgery, I had follow-up, blah, blah, blah. And I went from 110 miles an hour to literally not looking at email for the first 3 weeks. I was, kind of rehabbing. And in that silence, I finally couldn't crowd out the question anymore. Was I doing what I was passionate about? And my answer was no. And so now that I finally had asked and answered that question, the next question logically was, okay, smarty, what are you passionate about, right? And it was really all of those things that you listed in the intro. It wasn't what I was doing right then. It wasn't what I was being groomed to become, this soup to nuts HR executive in corporate America. So I spent the next, the remainder of my recovery period off of work, reflecting on that, doing a little bit of research, having some conversations with some people about, okay, this is what I'm thinking of doing. Talk me out of it. Tell me I'm nuts. Call me crazy. And the people that I called, thankfully at that point, said, you're not crazy. I've been waiting for this call because what you're suggesting is really what your gifts are. And I went back, into the office and negotiated a very long transition out. I had spent about 15 years there and, moved on and left in October of that year. So this was in mid-June and I stayed on until mid-October. And so just, it took though cancer to kind of wake me up to the whole life is too short not to do it, not to take my leap.
Yeah. And I think that's so important, but I think you did it the right way. So often people will just say, oh, I have this dream, and they just jump right into something without thinking it out. And then they sit there going, what am I going to do now?
Sure.
And exactly what you're talking about resonates so much with me, because there've been a couple of times when I had a very successful business going. I've had a couple of, when I was really young, I had a couple of jobs, but I've pretty much run my own business of some form or another since I was 12. So, I know what it is to be in business for yourself. And twice I've gotten very, very sick and have lost my business, and then had to figure out whether I wanted to do it again or not. And this last time I was in a car accident about 5 years ago. Totally, I spent 3 years without even getting out of bed, and that really has an effect on, on you running your business. And you have to just sit back and, like you said, in the quiet.
That's right.
Doing. And man, when you actually take the time to do that emotional work and to figure out the sensibilities of what you're doing, it really can create some amazing effects. So congratulations.
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's interesting, and to your point, whether it's cancer, whether it's a car accident, you will find that, and whether it's business failure, you will find that imposes new limitations on you. But you will also find, if you look for it, it frees you up in other ways, right? Yeah. Because it creates an opportunity, if you're open to it, to then narrow down your focus and say, okay, because of this limitation, or because of this constraint, or because of this shortcoming or failure or whatever it might be, excuse me, I now have to look at things in a different way. Mm-hmm. How am I going to overcome that? Mm-hmm. And some people choose not to do that. Some people choose to say, well, because of that, now I'm going to, just wallow. And you can do that for a time, but then you got to, put the big girl pants back on and get to work, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. There were only so many days that I could sit down there and because we lived with my parents, and my mom and my dad lived upstairs because we were there to take care of my folks. And we were living down in this dark basement, and, there were windows, but the windows were way up high, and I'm sitting in this bed because I can't even get out. I can't walk up and down the stairs. I can't, and it got to the point where you just say, there's only so many more days that I can sit here and watch TV and feel sorry for myself, get up and get going.
That's right.
Then you have to put it to work. The other thing that you said resonates so with me is when I was originally starting my business many years ago, my best friend was a government employee. She had a cushy job, right? She could do almost whatever she wanted to. And she could not understand why I was putting in so much effort and so much work and so much money into running my own business. And the number of times she would look at me and say, why don't you just go get a job? I'm going, oh God.
Yeah.
It's just, so I think there's a mentality out there for a lot of businesses and a lot of people who decide that they want to go into business for themselves, but they have to understand those things. And that brings me to my next question, which is, what was your biggest fear when you started out?
What's funny is I would have to say my biggest fear was that I wasn't going to do it. And I think honestly, 2011 was without question the toughest year of my life. But it was also the most rewarding, because I think had I not gone through the health situation that I did, I would not have had the quiet to listen to that voice in my head. And I probably would have stayed where I was. So my biggest fear was, even in the quiet, even when I had the answer to the question, that I wasn't passionate about what I was doing, that I wasn't going to do it, that I was going to wait for a better time, and it came down to the enemy that I think blocks the door for a lot of us who were debating making some sort of a leap in our lives. And that enemy, I realized, was 2 words: if only. Mm-hmm. If only I had more experience. If only I had more money saved. If only I didn't have more cancer treatments waiting for me, in a month or 2. If only I had the first clue how to build a consulting business, right? And I think, the more I have talked to people over the years about their own journey, their own struggle with, I'm sitting here and I'm not doing what I'm passionate about, or I was passionate when I got into this field and that fire has gone out. And I sit there and I talk to them about this enemy that's blocking their doorway called if only. And they sit there and they nod and they say, yeah, my if onlys are getting in my way. And I finally just said, F the if. F the if, because what you think is blocking the doorway is a shadow. It's a shadow. And so I just decided to take that leap. I said, forget that, forget the if only, F the if. And I just made the leap.
I love that. I'm gonna steal that statement.
Absolutely, please do.
It's so true, and I think the accountability issue keeps coming up over and over and over again for me in this personal. So I'm reading a book right now called The Wisdom of Oz. I love The Wizard of Oz, and there's so much in that book and in that movie that pertains to business for me, and the book is talking about, where Dorothy could have just given up. She was now, she could have become the queen of Munchkin Land or whatever, but she wanted to get to Oz. She wanted to go home, and she put her little shoes on and started walking. She didn't allow that scary wicked witch, and she didn't allow all this stuff to go on for her. She just said F the F, and
that's right. That's right.
Kept on going. And I think that's one of the things that oftentimes we don't do, that we need to just say, all right, let's, and the other thing that I use as kind of a story behind all of this stuff is, you are standing there beside this beautiful clear pool of water and you want to go swimming so bad, but you're afraid that it's going to be cold, and what do you do to do you really want to go swimming that bad that you're going to put up with for just a minute? Because once you get in that water, it's not cold anymore, but do you not go swimming because you're afraid of the cold, or do you just say, I'm going for it, and take the jump? Or do you 1 foot at a time, and then just kind of sneak in? People need to say, okay, I'm just going to jump into this. But I think they need planning first.
They do, and I think, for some people, the tiptoeing in and wading in, ankle deep first works better. I have a good friend of mine who is still working in her full-time job that she's not passionate about, but it is continuing to build up her experience. It's continuing to pay the bills while she on the side builds up her network and builds up her experience to go out on her own. And that's an option for a lot of people if they don't have either enough money saved, enough contacts established, et cetera. So to me, it does depend, on the person. I have to chuckle though at what you said before about, people saying, why don't you go out and get a real job? The mindset shift has to happen first for you, right? You have to say F the if first. You have to overcome the, are you nuts to even think this way first? Because you are going to encounter other people outside of your own head who say the same thing. Well, if only the economy were stronger. Well, if only, you actually knew a couple of things about this, that, or the other. I've had a couple of people since I went into consulting who have said to me, only since I've been married, and I was not married when I first went into the consulting business. I am married now. And I've had, at least on 2 occasions that I can remember, people say to me, well, you're lucky because you're married, so you have the luxury of going out and trying this consulting thing because you have a husband to support you. And would it shock you to learn that the 2 people that have said that to me were women? And I find that alarming. Yeah. I find it alarming. And I corrected them without getting defensive about it, to say, I took this leap of my own free will and volition well before my husband was a speck on the horizon, God love him, and did that of my own skill and my own will and all of that. And this is not, a hobby like, I started a gardening club because I was bored and we didn't need the income. But it's to your point about, I think a lot of people that don't have the bug for going out on their own, that entrepreneurial bug, or maybe do, but never really to the point that they're going to take the leap. They run into that. They run into the, oh, but that's not really a job. That's a whim. That's a hobby. That's you must be lucky because you must be independently wealthy that you can pursue, these flights of fancy. This is a job. If I don't work, if I'm not good at what I do, if I don't sell in addition to deliver to existing clients, I don't bring an income. And so but it's alarming to me, some of those voices. So your mindset shift has to happen in your own head first, and you have to have that confidence, because then that starts to exude, and then those other if onlys that you start to hear from other people don't matter so much.
Right. Yeah. You have to be able to, and I've just actually been realizing this recently with everything that I've been going through, is for the longest time, those external voices were really, they'd say, well, who are you and why do you think that I ever would want anything you have to offer? And then I go, yeah, I'm going, and you hear those things often enough, especially in the consulting or in the coaching field where there are so many of us out there, and this is from one coach to another, and they're obviously just feeling fear or something themselves to say something like that, but you hear it often enough. And if I hadn't felt so passionately about it, I probably would still be downstairs in my dark little bed and, not ever doing anything again. So I'm learning so much that mindset really is an important part of what we're doing if we want to get out there and be in business for ourselves. I think
it's a huge, it is the start. If you're not passionate, you can't be an entrepreneur You can't be a business owner if you're not passionate at your core about what you offer and what you do, because your clients will see that. And you can't deliver on something you don't buy into when you're a company of one. You just can't.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've gotten recently where, my tagline for years has always been, don't wait till pigs fly. And people would say, oh, that's just stupid. That's not professional. I actually had somebody say that to me the other day. And I finally got to the point where I went, screw you, That's my tagline. I stand behind it, and that's what it's going to be. I'm not letting somebody else tell me again, that I have to do it another way. And when you feel that authenticity, when you feel that passion and that belief, it's amazing.
Yeah.
What happens.
Oh yeah. And you hit the nail on the head with the word authenticity. I think when you first strike out on your own, I know it was true for me. I was pretty clear on all of the things that I knew how to do. And so it wasn't about, I didn't have a brand. I didn't have any sort of brand reputation, right? So it was really about going out and bringing in business in whatever way I could, which was to go out and try to find, the entrepreneurial equivalent of odd jobs. So it was, everything from grading papers for online universities to editing and developing resumes, to, some other freelance copy work, anything that would start to bring in some money so that I could mentally build up some confidence that, I can go from an entire career of having a full-time salary to just out on my own, bringing in some sort of revenue. And then it started to, to snowball from there. But when you're first starting out, you're so keen on, here's what I can do versus here's what I believe. And the authenticity element of that is so critical, because the more you are in touch with who you are, and I think you and I are through our sort of mutual development path that we are on, are getting more and more attuned to why it's so important to stay in touch with who we are, what we believe, what we stand for, and what we don't. The right clients, right? The right people will be attracted to us, and the wrong people will be repelled by our message. So that one who said, what do you mean that, when pigs fly, blah, 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 that's not professional, then that's not the client for you. They're constantly going to be the fly in the ointment. So, and I have to say something else about, this thought of, it took me a good couple of, I'm going to say more than a couple, a good number of years as a consultant to overcome the fraud complex. And the way I define the fraud complex, and any business owner goes through this, when you go out on your own and you leave the relatively safe bubble of getting a regular paycheck to do what you do, which as we know from certain movies that are quite satirical, you get rewarded for doing the bare minimum that does not get you fired, right? As a business owner / entrepreneur, you have to stay hungry, you have to be creative, and you have to be damn good at what you do. And so the fraud syndrome is when I pull up to a client site and I'm walking in the door, I have that little voice in the back of my head going, is today the day? Is today the day that the client realizes that Claire is a fraud, that Claire is making this up as she goes, that Claire doesn't really know as much as she projects that she knows? And again, that's mindset, right? Again, it's those voices in my head that I swear they can actually hear, and they're just going to repeat, and now this is the day I'm going to be thrown out. And I think every business owner goes through that to some degree. I don't know if that's what you've called it, if you've gone through that, but that fraud complex is very real, and you have to figure out a way to beat that back.
Well, and that's what I'm saying, was that it was excruciatingly painful for me. And I still to this day hear it over and over again. Who the heck do you think you are, and why should I listen to you? And if you allow those voices, you're never going to be able to succeed. You have to get to the point where you said, I am a damn good consultant. I know what I'm talking about. And if you listen to me, you'll grow your business. But you have to believe that. You have to feel that,
That's right. And you have to, again, with the concept of being authentic and being true to yourself and what you are passionate about, you have to stay very true to the clients you truly believe you can serve and the result that you truly believe you can get them. And part of that is, and I want to say I've learned that. I'm still learning it, and I'm learning it over and over in new and deeper ways every day. But it's learning to go to where they are, right? So it's not about me coming up with an offer and pushing it out there and hoping it sticks, and then cringing that it's going to fail because I oversold it to the wrong people, right? It's about being authentic with my message and my offer, and that's great. But connecting with the right client, hearing where they are now, right? Meeting them where they are, where they need to get to, and really listening, and not with a purpose of, okay, I'm just going to wait for them to stop talking and then hit them with my sell, right? Where they need to get to, and then making a decision on, can I get them there? Can I close that gap for them? And then having that conversation. And it's a completely different approach than I've got something to sell because I need the money, or I have something to offer because every client is a good client.
Yeah, absolutely. I couldn't agree with you more. And it's just, when you project your feelings, your beliefs, your authenticity, then people are going to just start flocking to you. And I'm seeing that more and more every single day that I'm out there. And real quick tip, guys, if you're on Facebook, if you're on LinkedIn, start showing up in a few different groups that you belong to, and don't do sales. Talk, share comments and thoughts, and answer other people's questions with no concept of, I'm doing this so you'll hire me. And it's fantastic what happens. Have you found that to be the same?
Yeah, I have, and I've done it the other way with complete failure. So I've done the chiming in on posts with the what I thought was a subtle attempt at selling, and apparently was not, and had crickets. And then I've had other seemingly innocuous chiming in on a post where I was not selling. I was not intending to sell. I just felt driven to respond to something because it was something I believed strongly about, and not controversial, just, either echoed a sentiment or commented on something. And it was that kind of a post, exactly to your point, that I turned around and someone saw what I commented and went and checked me out, checked out my LinkedIn profile, went to my website and downloaded my lead magnet. And I thought, well, that was easy. That was almost too easy. I didn't even try on that one. All the ones I was trying too hard for fell flat. So and I think, again, it's a lesson in authenticity, that the harder you try to sell, the more people are going to be turned off by that.
Well, and I think you feel your desperation.
Absolutely.
Oh, I need to make a sale. I need this.
That's right. That's absolutely right.
Anything to do with you, So
yeah.
You need to be, again, I don't know what other word to use other than authentic, and honesty and integrity too are big.
Yeah. Well, and they all go hand in hand, right? It is so much easier to be honest when you believe in your message. And it's so much easier to, quote unquote, sell when you're being authentic. I was having a conversation with a client not too long ago, and we were just mingling socially. So I wasn't sitting there trying to sell her. And I just, I said something to her about, we're sitting here, we're having a cocktail, and this is about the time that, I'm supposed to be trying to get more business out of you. I said, but I don't want to do that. And I said, quite frankly, I don't know how to do that because I don't really do sales. I don't know how to do sales. I said, I get caught up in the work. I just enjoy working with you. And her response was very telling. She said, the fact that you don't do sales, quote unquote, is why you're so good at it. She said, because when you're in the room with me, I know that you know what you're doing, and I breathe easier because you always help us get to where we need to go. And I never feel like you're selling. And it was very, it was flattering for one thing, but it was reassuring because I'm sitting here going, I'm probably supposed to try to market her or sell her or what, and I don't know how to do that. All I know how to do is be me and be attracted to the work that I know I can bring value to. So put me in a room where I get to do that and I light up. Right? Absolutely. And that's what it should always be about.
Yeah. Yeah. I got goosebumps from just listening to that comment. So, it's real. It's something we all need to listen to. And I had not thought about talking about these things when we were getting you signed up for the show today. We were going to talk about what you do, but I think this is really important stuff and things that people need to hear about. But with our last few minutes, I am going to transition a little bit and ask you to tell us what it is you really do. What
Absolutely.
does Talent Boost do for people?
Absolutely. So Talent Boost primarily is all about helping leaders create what we call the Whirlpool Effect. So leaders who, and we target or work with three main types of leaders. So these are leaders who either are struggling leaders, so leaders who, for one reason or another, are underperforming, themselves or through their teams, whether it's financially, whether they're losing employees, they're not getting the revenues they're supposed to be getting, et cetera. So there's the struggling leaders. There's a second category that I would call transitional leaders. So leaders that have assumed a larger leadership role. So whether they're leaders of leaders, or maybe they've been assigned to run a new division. It's so often we fall into the trap of, they were a great manager. Let's make them a big leader, and let's just assume they know that what they're doing, and they'll be a huge success. And so we know that that's often a recipe for failure. So there's kind of a pain point there. And then the third category is what I call the evolving leader. So leaders who have a relatively stable company or division or team, but they're feeling like it's time to scale, it's time to grow, it's time to add a product or service line. And so we work with these leaders on through a structured program. On the one-on-one program, it's a 6-month program. And then on a group program, it's 6 to 12 months, depending on the need. And we take them through a structured methodology to implement a new leadership strategy. So the Whirlpool Effect program is not a development program. It's not a coaching program. It doesn't teach them how to recruit or discipline or anything like that. It is truly a leadership strategy implementation that helps these leaders really change the way that they lead so that their people truly follow them. Because the only way that they can create the Whirlpool Effect is if they can get their people truly behind them, truly behind their mission, and everyone on board and moving in the same direction. And I call it that because if you think back to when you were a kid and you were in a swimming pool with your friends, invariably somebody would shout, "Let's make a whirlpool." And so everybody would just automatically just start trotting in a circle. Didn't matter which way, clockwise, counterclockwise, but everybody just automatically knew what that meant. And you started to go around in a circle. And after a few laps, you were able to pick up your feet and just get carried along in the current. And that's what leadership is supposed to be like. And too often, all of these types of leaders find themselves fighting what I call churn. And it's, whether it's underperformance, whether it's, trying to grow before your team is ready, whether it's biting off more of a leadership role than you really were prepared for. And so it's all about creating this whirlpool effect that truly is the way to get to amazing results in your business. So that's really the core offering, if you will, that we do. So if, can I plug my website? I don't know if that's allowed.
I was just going to ask you that. So yeah. Okay.
I didn't know if that was part of the rules. But yeah, if any of your listeners are interested in learning more about that or about what we do in general, they can go to our website, talentboost.net. You can learn about the Whirlpool Effect program. You can also read about the Whirlpool Effect. There's a book. The ebook version is free. You can download it right off of the website.
Fantastic. And what is your email address?
My email address is Claire, Claire, @talentboost.net.
Perfect. Guys, I highly recommend that you take advantage of downloading the ebook and reading it. One other question before we close up. If you're a sole proprietor, do you need to have leadership skills?
Oh, no question. No question. And I'm going to tell you, the first person you've got to lead is yourself, right? The leadership mindset is so important. We talk about, and I kind of talk about through the program and even through the description of the program, if you go to the website, that I have had the experience, I think we've all had the experience of working with great leaders. And I've also worked for a bunch of jerks, right? Narcissists, people that are famous for saying, do as I say, not as I do. That is very toxic, and your people aren't going to follow you. If you are a sole proprietor and that is your mentality, it is as toxic when you're a sole proprietor as it is when you have a company of 10,000, because that's what you project, that's what your clients feel, that's what the people around you feel. And what we have talked about through the duration of this podcast is you attract what is authentic to who you are and what you're sending out into the world. So really kind of reflect on what you want to send out into the world, because we only get one shot at this. We can keep evolving and reinventing who we are, but go after what you're passionate about, be passionate about that. But I really advise against being passionate about being a jerk.
Absolutely. And that's why I asked that question, because a lot of my listeners are one-person shows, and,
yep.
And they might have thought, well, we've been talking about teams and we've been talking about leadership, and there's got to be somebody there to lead, so this isn't important to me. But it absolutely is. I mean, from the minute we get up out of bed in the morning, whether we've got a business or not, we need to lead, or we're just going to sit in bed.
Oh, absolutely. And the self-leadership, the self-management, one of the biggest adjustments for me moving from, a corporate job where my schedule was predetermined, right? The alarm went off at 0:30, right? You got up and maybe you had breakfast, or you opted not to, so you could get a couple more minutes in, but, of sleep. And then you did the commute and you traveled either to the corporate office or you went to the airport and you did your thing. When that shifted to, I was the maker of my schedule, right? And I run my business out of my home. So in between podcasts and other calls and other meetings and other work, I'm running and doing laundry. I'm running to the supermarket. I'm planning the meals. I'm, whatever. The self-management of your business is even more critical, because you don't have a staff, because you don't have somebody who's coming into your doorway and saying, it's time for you to go to that meeting, or, it might be time for you to check in with that client and make sure everything's okay. It's all on you to balance that. That does not mean you don't have other resources at your disposal. And I think it's one thing that I learned a little bit later, and I, in hindsight, it's something I should have done a little bit sooner in my consulting journey, is bring in more guides, not bring in staff. But it's so tempting to just say, nope, I got it. I'm going to go out on my own and start my own business and handle everything because I'm Superwoman, and I'm going to show the world, and I'm going to prove to everybody that that I'm not crazy, that this wasn't a stupid idea, and that I'm not going to fail. Right? But you absolutely need guides. I mean, one of the things I just read the other day, which was so true, is if you own a business and you're working on your business, you have to work on your business as much as you're working to build a business, right? So it's a hard concept when you're first starting out to invest in yourself, but it's so critical. It's so critical to get those other voices, those positive voices that are going to push you and challenge you and ask you questions and make sure that you're growing in the right direction.
And can I use that in my marketing? Because that's absolutely perfect. For the 11th year now, I have run a business retreat. That's the Dream Big Retreat. And the whole purpose of that retreat is to get people working on their business, not
absolutely
in their business. And people say, I don't get it. I'm too busy, doing the work. I'm too busy doing this. And they don't get the fact that if you don't have a plan, if you don't have these guides, if you don't know, what do you do if tomorrow you're told you've got cancer? How are you going to run that business? Do you have something set aside so you know that business is going to be okay while you're needing extra support?
Right.
But people don't get it. So you're so right on with that. Thank you so much.
No problem. No, I know it's a lesson that I've had to learn. And I think, it's one of the things that I think is such a gem from your podcast, is just sharing these little nuggets that we don't often take the time to hear for ourselves. And as business owners, it's so critical to learn from others, so we're not tripping over the same landmines.
Yep, absolutely. Well, listen, we're running out of time, so it is time for me to say thank you. This has been an absolutely fantastic discussion, and I've learned so much, and I've been able to say, I knew that. That's really good that somebody else says the same thing that I
Well, it's my pleasure, and I appreciate the time. And I as we have talked in our last conversation, I could talk to you all day, so it was absolutely a pleasure.
Well, wonderful. And guys, if you want to download this and listen to it, subscribe to the podcast at Don't Wait Till Pigs Fly. And we are live every Thursday evening at 5 p.m. So you can go in, you can subscribe, and then you'll get notifications going forward of all the wonderful podcasts that we're going to be having. And until the next time we get together, don't wait till pigs fly, but soar higher now. Thank y'all, and we will talk again soon. Take care.
Thank you for listening to Don't Wait Till Pigs Fly with host Nancy Becker. Join Nancy every Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern on Global Voice Radio.